Okay, welcome to Blub Talks. I'm Robert McKenzie, teaching sensei at Speech Blubs. And today we'd like to introduce parenting expert and best-selling author Susan Donnellan, whose book, Secrets to Parenting Without Giving a Fuck, an F, a beep, teaches methods rooted in the Montessori method that are meant to help develop happy humans. I'm sorry about that. I still struggled with how to say the title without saying the word, and I think people get it.
No problem.
It's a memorable one. It's great. The complete title of your book is my favorite of the past 10 years, which is Secrets to Parenting Without Giving an F, the Nonconformist Playbook to Raising Happy Kids Without Public Meltdowns, Power Struggles, and Punishments, and is now available for sale on Amazon.com. So check it out. I highly, highly, highly recommend the book. My wife is now reading it, and I kid you not, we're talking about this book on a daily basis. Like, Robert, no means no. No negotiating. So we'll get to that. Okay, her AskMomParenting.com platform removes the daily overwhelm from parenting. She mentors parents on the parenting mindset for achieving positive, quick shifts in their child's behavior. This mindset, though, starts with the parent. As a mother of 4 grown children, including triplets, age 23, her eldest, and the triplets who are 19, she has been through all parenting phases, and I think we can all call her an expert and is here to help as many parents as possible. This interview will be a slightly different format in that I'll start with some questions about your work, and then I'm going to ask you to comment on just a few of the quotes that are amazingly relatable, and everybody can learn from them and understand them because they're so they stick out and they just want to be talked about. So here we go. First question. Now, your eldest child is age 23. Your triplets are 19. I said that. You have identical boys, and they have a fraternal sister in the triplet group. Can you tell me about that experience of parenting that must have been?
Well, okay, so yes, it was quite interesting and fun. It was a very fun dynamic, but it took me a little while to get used to it. So originally, I never really was sure that I wanted kids, and I married a man who loves children, and I thought, I'll have a kid for him. How nice of me, and how bad could it be? So I had our first one, and it became obvious that he needed a sibling because we were just kind of tripping over ourselves and accommodating his every need. And anyway, went to have our second baby, and I ended up with the triplets. So my first reaction, well, I had many reactions, but one of the main reactions was feeling sorry for my oldest one because I thought, you know, he's not going to get any attention. He's not going to get any time. How am I going to manage all of this? And then once the kids were born and they started getting old enough to interact with him, it was actually quite funny because he wasn't able to pull older brother antics. They would circle the wagons, and those 3 were a very strong bond. So anyway, I found that, you know, compared to my friends, that parenting a singleton and then the triplets was quite a difficult challenge. It really made me raise my parenting game because, you know, you had the identical boys and the girl, and you've got the different sexes. But I found myself really having to work on our oldest to make sure that he could integrate in. There's a 3-year age difference, and just him trying to be bossy or making people cry or whatever he was doing. It became more of a challenge. It's a challenge with 4, but it became an interesting challenge with those 3 and the older sibling. In fact, a quick little side note, I had another friend, 2 friends with triplets. And I said, you know, I'll do triplets all day long. What makes triplets hard is the older sibling. So
imagine your organizational skills must have really come to the fore, you know, and
yeah. I stepped up my game, and I had game I didn't even know I had.
I'm fascinated. You sort of touched on it. The dynamic between the triplets themselves between your daughter and her two brothers. Did she ever feel left out? Was she running the show? Was she, what was it like for her as the girls?
Because I had my own little representative sample, I can tell you that girls do, progress and grow and mature more quickly. Yes. So she was the first one pulled out. So out of the three, she was at the bottom. She was pulled out. So all of them were born in the same 60 seconds, but she was the oldest and She never lets them forget. Okay. So she tended to be, very empathetic and very nurturing. And the boys were kind of more shy. So she kind of came into her own more quickly. So her and her older brother have more confidence in that way. They were more, they bonded a little bit more quickly because she was moving along at a quicker pace, just understanding things more quickly, being potty trained more quickly, walking faster, that type of thing. But so she's large and in charge.
It's like my 10-year-old and her 17-year-old brother. The 10-year-old runs the show. There's no doubt.
Yeah. And it's even more so now that they're older.
I can imagine. Now, you mentioned to me when I first met you that your triplets, your boys, actually had some speech therapy in the beginning. Can you tell us?
They did. Yeah. They had a hard time saying R's and a few other sounds, but it was kind of like it was a delayed sound, like a delayed speech sound. It was I have a funny example, but they were on a ski lift and my husband was filming one of the boys and he said something about when you have to go to the bathroom and you have to fart and like you think you have to fart. And so once we played that back and we were watching it on the bigger TV, my husband and I acknowledged it was very obvious at that point, like, okay, we really need to get on this because they're not they're not able to delineate those sounds. And so we did get some speech therapy. I think they were probably in about second, third grade at that point.
How long did it last? Just curious.
I think we were able to get it solved within about 2 years. It was about 1.5 to 2 years. And, just the maturity of their mouth and the control of their tongue and, all of those types of things. And they were able to, I wish we had something like a speech Blubs because we, had we go in the old fashioned way, go in and allocate time and if they had a self-directed way to be able to use an app and practice, especially with them having each other, it would have been ideal. So, it was
a great point in saying that they solved it before the bullying phase of their life sort of kicked in, which, how kids are able to pinpoint anybody's weakness or difference in any way. Yeah. So that's great. That's fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, say I'm a parent who needs parenting help. How does it work getting to you, finding you? Do you make an appointment? Do you sort of do a needs assessment? How does it go?
Well, I'm really, I'm not a traditional, doctor or whatever. I tend to be a little bit more relatable, more mom to mom, parent to parent. So I'm very accessible and, you could go to the askmomparenting.com website and everybody has to go through a 20-minute free consultation. Really what that does is it establishes my foundational principles and where they're at and if there's a fit. So, that initial 20 minutes just lets me gauge where they're at. And I have 3 different mentoring programs. So based on where they're at and what I think might be going on and what we both agree is going on, I'll match a program that fits what their needs are, and those programs go more by time and, is it a recurring repetitive issue? Is it more of a crisis where we can handle this one particular issue more quickly? Or are we looking at, establishing a foundation in the home that's a more long-term, it's more of the long game program. So after the 20 minutes, then we'll determine where we want to go from here and if there's a fit, and then we'll sign them, they'll select the program that fits them best.
And how do the parents receive your advice, your support? Is there a period of them having to sort of learn to accept something that must be difficult to hear? Like you're doing something not quite right, or are they so ready that they're just like a sponge?
It depends. It really depends. It kind of depends on the level of overwhelm and how quickly if they're really at the point where they've tried everything and they're just like, I just need this to go away. I just need this to be fixed. What do I do? Hat in hand, help me. What do I do? Then they're at that point where they're going to be a little bit more open and ready. But I would say that the clients that kind of adapt more quickly are the ones that have a little bit more self-awareness to where they are honest about the situation. They're not blaming, the spouse or the partner. They're not blaming other situations. They're taking ownership of the power that they have as a parent and saying, that if I'm willing to accept credit when my child is behaving well, by default, I also need to accept credit for when they're misbehaving, because if I have the power for them to behave well, I also have the power that, the responses that I'm giving and the things that I'm saying are affecting the negative behavior as well. So you can't have one without the other, right? We like to pat ourselves on the back when things are going well, but when they're not going well, it hurts to admit that maybe I need to change some of my tactics or some of the things that I'm saying or doing.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Now, in reading your book, one realizes that you truly are an expert on tantrums. Now, how to approach them, what they mean, where tantrums come from, and how to deal with them in that moment when you're in line in a store and everyone's staring at you, for goodness sake. And so can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I think it depends on the age of the tantrum. Traditionally, we tend to think of tantrums as the terrible twos and the terrible threes. And I learned that the hard way. It's not the terrible twos, it was the terrible threes for us. But in that age range, so if I'm mentoring a parent and they've got a child between the 2 to 3 age, then my advice is different than if you're telling me your child is 4, 5, or 6 throwing a tantrum. And I can talk about both if you want, but the younger age, in fact, I just went over this the other day with a parent and I said, at the age that this child was, I said, this is phase behavior. And so a lot of this is understanding from the big picture as the parent, and especially if you're a new parent and you're experiencing things for the first time, we all tend to see this tantrum, Tasmanian devil, behavior and think, like I did with our son. Oh, he's just a bad seed. Thank God I have 3 more kids to try it. Right. Like I thought, oh where did this come from? I'm a bad parent. We tend to blame ourselves. And sometimes we just need to realize that it's a phase and so now the question becomes, how do we minimize the phase? So we tend to overparent those moments, thinking we have to make change. That's how I learned. I overparented, made broad assessments of, the type of kid I thought my son was. And so if you can get a parent early enough, then they can relax a little and go, oh, it's not me. It's not something I'm doing or something I'm not doing. It's just a phase. And so how do we handle that? We in those moments with phase behavior, we really remove no audience, no tantrum. You remove yourself from the situation, whether it means you go in the laundry room and shut the door, you go to the bathroom, shut the door, you ignore it, you put your invisibility cloak on, and you are not even seeing it. And I remember, so with much of raising children and phase behavior, it's about predicting and working in advance. And so your child's going to throw a few tantrums, and then you're going to start to see the pattern, and you're going to go, oh, okay, he's in this tantrum phase. Right. And in our son's case, we knew that he was throwing tantrums, and it was my mom and my husband and me, and we were at the dinner table and we knew it was coming. So we all agreed to just act like nothing was happening. And we just continued eating dinner and like making up conversation. And oh my gosh, can you believe that he's even behaving that way? Oh my God, just like nothing. And he's running back. Yeah. I'm not kidding you. Within 60 seconds, maybe 90 seconds, nobody was reacting. Nobody was yelling. Nobody was trying to calm him down. It stopped. So no audience, no tantrum. And we tend to overparent those moments. And if a parent knows that it's a phase, then they don't need to attach all this meaning to it.
Where were you 14 years ago?
Yeah.
I had to have all these tools to deal with it. Like this method didn't work and this technique didn't work. And I just need what you're saying. I just needed to let go, let him do what he wanted to do and not give it more meaning than it needed.
Well, and a lot of what I teach, the parenting mindset is this behind the scenes type behavior on the parent's part. So it's not like I'm letting him throw the tantrum. And actually let me add on to that in a second, but it's not like we're letting it just be. Okay. In the safety and comfort of our home is where the training occurs. So if you handle tantrums at home, you won't get them at the store.
Right.
All right. So that said, we still do get some tantrums at the store, but the more you can lay the groundwork at home, the less it ever happens in public, because they know, that you mean business, or that you're not going to be reacting. You're not going to be giving them the attention that they're trying to control in that moment.
Sure.
And so if we want to talk about tantrums at the 4, 5, 6-year-old level, that is a case for taking time for training. So couple times now you see the kid behaving, I want candy, I want this toy.
Right.
Again, it's a pattern. You recognize the pattern and now you act in advance. Right. So what you'll do is you'll establish expectations that when we go to the store, we're not getting candy, we're not getting a toy. I have errands to run. We're getting what's on my list and nothing else.
Right.
What you'll want to do is do a dry run. You establish the expectations and then you go to the store and just have a reason. Just go for the training,
right?
So that the child can test you. And you don't now, because if you wait until you're in the moment and you're at the store and you're harried and you really need these items, now you're going to be more prone to act and give that child the attention. So now you take.
Yeah. So sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So you just take the time to go to the store and train them that here's my list. This is all we're getting. And then, you kind of do a little drive-by of the toy aisle, just taunting, do a little drive-by of the candy. And just because you want them you want to be able to have the opportunity to go, what did we talk about? Mm-hmm. It's not on my list. And then if they do decide to throw a tantrum, screaming and yelling, you're able to just drop everything and leave quietly because you're taking time for training on that run. And then when you really are in the store and you're really in a hurry, you really only have to do these things once, twice. You just act with action and not words, set expectations.
To plug your book, but you describe this very situation in the book in detail. And it's really something worth reading for every parent who has a 2 or 3 or 4-year-old that that experiences this need to tantrum as a
suffering.
Okay, now also in the book, you have something called the B word system, which I think is amazing. You have to tell us a little about that.
I really made an effort to create little workstations in the house where, they had the crafts, back when my kids were younger, we really didn't have a whole lot of the iPads and the gaming and stuff. So we were still sort of using our imagination at that point. And I really had a behind the scenes situation going on where, drawing books and art and just creative, stimulating things to do. Kids' attention spans are very, very short. So I had a rule that, we are not allowed to use. Now, I swear like a sailor, as you can tell from the title of my book. And, I just told the kids, those are adult words. You can use them when you're an adult. Done. That worked. But when the kids came to me, maybe told me once or twice, I'm bored. Oh, that's not happening. That's the B word. And, we can let other B words slip out, even some like not so good B words. I never cared about that. The B word is bored, and that's a state of mind. So I would tell the kids, bored is a state of mind. And you're not allowed to use that word because you are in charge of the state of mind. You are in charge of, your self-initiation and your self-directed behavior and what you're doing. You have the power to go and choose anything that you want to do, to create a new game, to go outside, to, I set the tone and the environment for them, and they would have to pick and create within that environment. And so I just that was my rule. And actually, even to this day, the kids don't, we were visiting them in college a few weeks ago and they're like, the B word, mom. So I don't, that was just a little rule I had, and they think it's funny, but it really stuck.
Yeah, I'm sure now they do. Maybe then they felt a little different.
Yeah.
Same conversation with my teenage son who is struggling to find himself. So he's not the kind of person who is gregarious about learning new things. That's not true. He just has to sort of fall into it. If I say one word about, hey, why don't you? No. And my wife, hey, what do you think you'd like? No. So he's got it in his own time, his own situation.
He's 17?
He's 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want my 2 cents?
Please, that's why you're here.
Yeah. Okay. Teenage brain. In Boise, Idaho, and I say this in the book, we have something called inversions. And it's where, we just get fogged to the ground.
Same
and
here.
That's a teenage boy brain. I mean, it's fogged to the ground. And again, remember what we said early on is that girls tend to just do things more quickly. Teenage boy brains really, and there's science behind this. I'm not a scientist. You'll have somebody else on who's a PhD that can explain this in real terms. I'm giving it to you in rudimentary terms, but it's a fog and it needs to lift. And gradually it starts to lift and they start to their frontal lobe starts to connect and everything starts working and firing. Right. My advice on that, and having 3 teenage boys and been through the process, what we did was we really tried to keep our kids productively busy. Right. And I don't mean that we were out entertaining them or whatever, but we had certain expectations where you need to get a job. And I don't care what that job is, but you have to negotiate with bosses, you have to plan in advance, you have to get your time off, and you have to do some type of sport or musical instrument or some type of something. Yeah. You pick. So I create the rule and you have all this freedom within the rule to select, I'm not controlling anything. I don't care where you get the job, just a job. And what that does is it starts to get them making, new friends. It gets them understanding the public. It gets them understanding the value of money, all these things.
Other adults.
Yeah. And being productively busy just means that now they're not sitting around idle, ruminating and thinking too much about stuff that, they're out and they're busy and they're building, their sense of self-worth. They're establishing money at 17. But the teenage boy brain, all you can really do is lead them down paths where they can maybe realize what their goals are. We would try to lead with breadcrumbs. If we saw anything that looked appealing, lead with breadcrumbs, help them on the discovery process, but never put pressure, because everybody's on their own journey. And as a parent, we want to realize that. And that's why I have in the book a lot of talk about letting go of control. We feel like we need to overparent and we really don't. So that's my 2 cents there.
Thank you. I'll take it. Now, we're going to take a short break here to pay the bills, but we will be right back with Susan Donnellan.
Speech is one of the main components of a child's development. Without speech, it is so much harder for children to express their needs, feelings, and opinions. The ability to speak also impacts their confidence, ability to connect with others, and success in life. We believe that every parent wants that for their child. Boost your child's ability to speak. Download Speech Blubs' fun and educational speech app, used by more than 2 million parents, just like you.
Okay, we're back with Susan Donnellan here on Blub Talks. Parenting expert, best-selling author. We've asked some questions. She's given at least 2 cents, but now I have some amazing quotes from her book that you guys need to hear, and we'll get her to comment on them. The first one was what you kind of mentioned in the beginning. It says, I realized I lucked out meeting a man who made marriage seem like it wouldn't suck.
Yeah.
if I said to my wife, if I asked my wife, why did you marry me? Well, you're the first man that made men. I'd like it, and on the other hand, I would go, well, geez, it's not a high bar,
It is actually, it is a high bar, because if you have high expectations and growing up, I did have a lot of self-confidence, and I knew, what I was bringing to the table. And I had high expectations of the man that I was dating, that, he had his own goals and his own career path and his own, I had a lot of, self-empowerment and confidence. And when you think, and I talk to my kids about this in terms of finding partners and stuff, we really want to be actively thinking about what it is what are we looking for? What are we offering to the relationship? But really feel secure in yourself first. And then, I would never say that any man completes me. He enhances me, right, but he's not completing me. And I think so many times we're looking for what we might find deficient in ourselves in a partner. So yeah, my state of mind back then was very much, dating. I didn't want to be held down. Right. I just didn't have a high opinion of people are unhappily married. And I'm like, I don't want any part of that. And so when I met him, they say a soulmate is a stranger that you haven't met yet. Right. So I knew immediately with him. And so, yeah, I thought marriage was going to suck.
Looking at your book, and he's a tall, it's obviously, he's a successful guy. He looks confident. He looks strong. He looks like he's achieved a lot. And he has, in the military, he's quite important, as I understand.
Yeah, the point to him was that, he knew what he wanted to do, and he was willing to just be passionate about his dreams. And, he committed to a life of purpose. And that's all I can ever ask for anybody. I feel like I have a life of purpose. We try to raise our kids to find their sense of purpose. And, getting back to your son, right, we want to lead them with the breadcrumbs, giving them experiences to help them find their sense of purpose. What gets you out of bed in the morning? And just, meeting a guy like that was just a huge enhancement to me as to how I felt the same about myself, that, I'm going to start my own business. I've got things that I want to do that make me happy. And just, I felt like marriage was a prison sentence. Like it was just going to hold you down. Like I would rather be alone than have some guy, dragging me down.
What, 24, 25 years?
We've been married. Our marriage? Yeah, we're close to 27, almost 30 years. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Well done. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
These are the kind of stories I love to hear. It's because it's really a decision, isn't it?
It is a conscious decision.
It's a conscious decision to say, this is what we're going to do. We are going to make it work. There are no other options, and we will do what it takes. That means getting up off your butt, off the couch, whatever that means for you. But
there's no other man I could imagine being surprised with triplets with. Like, this is a man, you look at, you think about your partner and you talk about living your life, in the rocking chair until you're old. And you think about how will I experience all of life's surprises with this person? Right. And I just couldn't be happier still after all these years. Yeah.
Well done. Excellent. Next question. Sorry. Your first step towards parenting without giving a F is being willing to change yourself.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. You remember I said I really didn't want kids. My husband loves kids. I had a couple kids for him, thought, how bad could it be? Right. I'm a type A person, running my own business. I had no experience with children. I thought you just tell them to do stuff. I had no idea. The level of psychology needed, So I was, pretty arrogant. I had my ego pretty much right there, front and center. And when they weren't, my oldest has a ton of confidence himself. He's got all the traits that make him difficult to parent, but will make him successful someday. Now that someday is now. And I remember yelling all the time. It was frustrating. The stress and the overwhelm begins to build. And it doesn't matter if you have 4 kids, 1 kid, 2, it's all relative. We are all, as parents, it's synonymous with stress and overwhelm. So I just remember yelling, and I had to go on my own journey of discovery. And I am a very spiritual person. I feel like, this was my path I was meant. This is where I was meant to be. This is what I was meant to do, is to raise these 4 people and learn these life lessons. And I embraced them. And so as I started learning how to honor these 4 individuals, how to raise them, how to help them be independent and find their own purpose, I realized the first thing I had to do was get my ego out of the way. So get my ego out of the way and meant changing myself and understanding, like I said in the beginning, I can't take credit for good kids if I don't take credit for kids that are frustrating me,
Right.
That are pushing back, that are throwing tantrums, that are yelling, and just misbehaving, the types of things that we're parenting.
Right.
I had to take ownership that, they're responding to me.
Right.
So mentoring parents, it's not about fixing the child. It's about us changing, and they respond to us. And that is a counterintuitive way of thinking about parenting.
Right. Yeah, because you do think about your child and what he or she is not doing that you'd like them to do. How can I get him or her to do that? Well,
right.
And so it leads me to my next quote.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the epiphany: lose control to gain control. This is that, what did you say? A counterintuitive sort of look on the whole system.
And, that's really why I did give the book the title that I gave it, because it's like, who would ever parent without giving, an F? Lose control to gain control is really about, again, me thinking I have to overparent every moment. I need to be involved. I need to be needed. Oh my gosh, I'm so stressed. I'm needed in every minute.
Right.
And then the epiphany for me was realizing that as I let go of control, things happened as they were meant to happen.
Right.
It doesn't mean that I'm sitting, on the couch doing remote control parenting. Hey, there's a lot of work going on, but the work is going on behind the scenes, and it's not creating power struggles. I'm not directly addressing, do this, do it like this. It's much more behind the scenes. It's much more subtle, much more psychological. And that's why I really talk about my book and my mentoring is more like a mindset. When you flip that switch to the mindset, now you realize, this is how I can change behavior. The best compliment.
Yeah, sorry. It brings
the best compliment I've ever gotten from a parent was like them walking away, scratching their head going, how's this going to work?
Right.
Just try it. And then them coming back going, I didn't see that coming. Wow. How, just these generation after generation, we keep doing the same thing with timeouts and the punishment and the control. And letting go of control is really about us. It's about our ego, that we feel like it needs to be done the way we want it. And I have an interesting example that on part of my awakening and my journey when I had a grandma come in and watch my older son for about 4 hours while I worked from home. So she was an older grandma. And I walked by the room and she was feeding I was trying to get a lot of food in him. So I was trying to get him to sleep and sleep time, everything. So I needed him to drink 8 ounces. And I walked by the room and she was feeding him and his head was off her lap upside down. And he was drinking and his head was upside down. And I walked by and I'm like, he's never going to get 8 ounces. What's she doing? Well, I went to the bathroom, came back. As I walked by again, she held up the empty bottle and said, 8 ounces down. And I thought, note to self, Sue, you don't have the answers. This is just be quiet, stop and listen and learn. And that was one of the first examples that I had of me going, I have a lot to learn. Could you imagine as the new mom, it would have been my right to say, what are you doing? Can you feed him with your arm? But not only is that disrespectful to her as a grandmother who's already raised children, but that is typical new mom behavior. We tend to overparent, we tend to control. when I let go, and that's just the first example of many in raising my kids, that I realized, let go of control to gain control.
I'm looking at the following quotes here that I wrote down. Once we relax control and start trusting ourselves, our parenting becomes much more purposeful. That's one. The next one is, and this one I like because it rhymes and it's easy to remember. Listen, guide, let them decide. I mean, it's all that same thing, isn't it? You're basically turning over the journey to them where it probably should be in the first place, but when you're a first-time parent, especially, getting to that place where you can let them go down their path, it's like letting them fall down for the first few times.
It's very scary, and that's why in the book, I really do talk about the whole first half is about your relationship with yourself. Because for you to adopt and adapt to the second half of the book and the principles there, you really kind of have to have that first stuff, the ego. You have to have awareness. Yeah. It's a journey. We're all learning. We're all adapting. We're all figuring out what works, and we all want to know what works. Right. But that's why I call this, foundational mindset, because once you understand the psychology of this, it informs all your other decisions and all the other ways that you start to parent. So if you really, like when I get a parent that's, got a child from 2 to 5 or 6, and we lay these principles down, they build upon all the future issues. And so we don't have to talk about how to handle all these various things. This foundational way of thinking informs all of your parenting. And that's why I say from 2 to 20, when you understand this book really covers all of that, because it's a way of thinking, it's a way of approaching, it's respectful.
It definitely is. And we're going to come to my favorite quote. It's by no means indicative of the rest of the book, but you're talking about guilt. You say, guilt is like having a third boob. It serves no other purpose than to make you feel weird and wrong. Now, I don't have any boobs, but I can imagine it would make you feel weird. This is great. And guilt is in every part of parenting, isn't it?
Oh, gosh. Well, and that's why I tried to be funny, because, a lot of people, there's a lot of coaches and mentors and people out there that are trying to get people to let go of control, let go of guilt, and understand that guilt is just, and I say it's a wasted emotion, and it really is. It's no amount of worry and guilt will change the past or change the future. We worry, we have anxiety about the future, but no amount of that energy we're spending ruminating is going to change anything. And so I had that quote simply because I was trying to be funny, to sort of grab the attention of a person to say, okay, this is how silly guilt is. It's a wasted emotion. We don't need it. It doesn't serve a purpose. And I talk a lot in guilt. I mean, I have all the different examples of what guilt, society, the guilt that kids put on you, all of these types of ways that guilt finds its way into our lives.
Right. You list 4 of them, I think, four types of guilt. Yeah. Like guilt that you put on yourself, the guilt that others, I can't remember them all now, but
but it's a full circle way of looking at it, because we attach guilt to others. Right. If you loved me, you would do that. We allow our kids to put guilt on us. Well, Johnny has an Xbox. Why can't I? Society, and with social media, is trying to put guilt onto everybody. Like, posting all these perfect pictures of me, with my kids on a picnic and blah, 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 all these other, so try to get the parent to sort of see through these things and to understand these elements that go on, that if we're not aware of them, they affect how we parent, they affect our psyche, they affect us, and none of it's good. None of it is about raising our child in the best, healthiest way possible.
I think it's brilliant what you're saying about guilt, because, because failure is an inevitable part of parenting. And you feel bad about yourself, and you feel like, oh, I could have done that differently, or, oh my God, my son is this way because I did this, or my daughter is this way because I did this. And So the wasted emotion is, I think, a powerful sentiment that all parents need to listen to. So listen up there, parents. Okay. Now, the big part of our session here is the takeaway. Now, your book talks about being for sale, and just some of the values you list include, I'm going to list one, and then I'll ask you to comment on it. Having integrity builds integrity.
Well, I think what parents might not realize, or maybe they realize it, but it's fleeting and they're not really embracing, is that our kids are watching us every day. Every day they're, if your words and actions don't add up and you're asking them to do things that you're not willing to do or that you don't do, or you tell them, I can't drive you somewhere because I have this involved, but you're over here on your phone. Integrity is being a person of your word, following through with action, just simple, basic ways of living. But, we are really distracted these days, all of us, our kids and us. So it's difficult to tell them to limit their gaming and limit their time on the phone while we're on our phone. They see it. And so that was kind of the point of that quote, is that integrity means that I'm standing by my words, I'm standing by my actions, and we are a role model. Our kids are watching. Right. So if you're for sale on those issues and you're not really, abiding by what you're asking them to do, and I saw it all the time with my kids' friends, parents, I saw it. And, again, it just comes back to that initial, it's like selfishness or ego. It's those types of things. We've got to get that out of the way as parents, or be aware that they see it.
And the next one I want you to comment on is no means no, no negotiating.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked me about that, because one of the things that the philosophies that I have is very few rules. So I don't burden the kids with a lot of rules, do this here and this now, and very few rules. But when I execute a rule, it's not to be negotiated. So my big thing is curfew. I always had a 30-minute earlier curfew. If the kids' friends were coming home at midnight, I made it 11:30. But because I didn't burden them with a bunch of nonsense rules throughout the day, the one rule I had, they didn't, I didn't deviate on. So I made it clear to the kids, guys, I'm going to have expectations of you, and we're going to work together on chores and whatever. We're going to partner on these things, but these are hard and fast rules. Your curfew is such and such, and so no means no. If I tell you you're not going out in the middle of the week to go see a concert, or, a lot of these parents, they let their kids out during the week. I wanted the kids to think that, it's business mindset, and during the business, you're at work, you're at school. This is this mindset. It's a responsibility. We're not going out during the week. That's a rule. Sorry. That they're, going to call me and ask me to deviate. Can I do this after you said no? No means no. And I'm not for sale on that. And they, my kids' friends thought they were cute because they would come over and like, oh, I got this. You watch, I'll get your mom to say yes because, their parents said yes. Yeah. And it's just hilarious because I say that in the book. My older son was like, dude, she doesn't, good luck. She doesn't play. And that's when I kind of knew I had arrived. I thought, good, they respect the few rules, but the fact that I don't deviate from them, so it's important.
It gives them boundaries, doesn't it?
It gives them boundaries, but more than anything, it gives them confidence. They love that, even though it might seem like we're disappointing our kids. And, it's hard to raise kids and to be the one walking on eggshells because they're pissed off at us. But when you say no and you stick to it and you stand for something, the respect is through the roof. The kids really respect it. So, that's most important right there.
Sure. The last one I'll mention that I'd love comments for is really important. Clarity and consistency equals trust and respect. So it kind of ties into what you were saying before.
Well, really, to sort of break that one out a little bit more is like, clarity and consistency means that I first I need to know what I expect of my kids. So I need to kind of sit with myself and say, And again, everything's phased behavior. So every now and then you have to kind of check in with yourself and see a pattern starting to change, and you go, okay, hold up. I see that they're starting to stay out a little later, or they're starting to come over and do a sleepover and pull an all-nighter, or whatever it is that you're dealing with. You see the pattern. So once you see the pattern, 2 times is a pattern, right? You see something, you see it again, pattern. Right. I teach parents to recognize patterns. Once you see that you're in a pattern, you stop and you check in with yourself and say, how do I want to handle this? Because if you don't take care of the patterned behavior, it starts to spiral, and now you become reactionary. And really the key to parenting is working in advance and going, okay, I'm heading this off at the pass. I know where this is going. Check in. How do I feel about this? How am I going to frame this? Then you sit with the child during a non-confrontational time. You don't wait until the pattern is in place and they're behaving. You stop and say, hey, I've noticed, you're starting to do X, Y, and Z, whatever it is you're doing. You're staying out later. You're doing sleepovers, but I see you sneaking out. Whatever behavior, that's going to stop. We're not doing that. And you set the expectations. You set the rule. And you have a conversation with it, and you tell the children your expectations. Then you get some buy-in. And so the real takeaway here is that the whole crux of my book and the whole mindset and philosophy is this that I'm talking about now, which is you see the pattern, you work in advance, you set the expectation, and then when they get you get the agreement. Do we hear each other? This is not how this is going to be. We get the agreement. Then when they do the pattern again, which they will, yep. Now you're coming back and saying, what did we agree to? And that is how you create accountability. Right. Is because you set the expectation, you take time for training. So you train them that this is what I expect of you. And then when they step out of bounds, because they will, because they're kids and that's what they do, and that's okay. Now, instead of yelling and grounding and punishing and restricting, because restriction equals rebellion, that's a new one, right? Yeah. So now, instead of yelling and restricting, all I can do is have a mature partnership conversation with the child and say, what did we talk about? What did we agree to? Well, that I can't, that I'm sneaking out when I have sleepovers. Okay, so what are we going to do about that? And now they start to become the author of the consequence. This works at 4, 5, 10, 15. It's a philosophy. It's a process, and it works. You're not yelling. You're not punishing. You don't need to. You're treating them with respect. Right.
Agreed. Now, I have to say we're running out of time, but I need to tell our viewers that so far we've only gone through the first half of your book. There's so much more. You talk at great length about every parent's superpower, which is their freedom and ability to choose, which is something we could spend a whole session on. Mm-hmm. And then there's the section about magic mantra.
Yeah, that's huge.
You guys need to check this book out. I'm serious. It's going to be something that's going to be with me for a long time, and I hope that you'll check it out too. The name of the book is, again, I'm scrolling through my notes here because I'm old and my memory isn't so good. Secrets to Parenting Without Giving a F, the Nonconformist Playbook to Raising Happy Kids Without Public Meltdowns, Power Struggles and Punishments. Don't forget, it's available for sale on Amazon. And if you want to get in touch with Susan, her information is going to be listed below this video. And you'll see this in Instagram posts and so on. So thank you, Susan, for sharing your expertise and advice and making us all smarter and more empowered.
It's just sharing information, and that's how we help each other.
It was still, you're helping. I'm here with you, and I know you're helping at least one person, which
That's
means
great.
You're helping at least 3 other people who I live with. So it's nothing but good. So
good. I'm glad.
Talks. I'm Robert McKenzie, wishing you what we here at Speech Blubs work very hard to do: joy and success in helping your child speak. Speech Blubs.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at SpeechBlubs. Visit our website, speechblubs.com, for more information on speech development created by experts. Last but not least, download the Speech Blubs app to explore how you can improve your child's speech with us.